Salutations everyone, it is Matty here with my 2019 review for Borderlands The Pre Sequel. Before you ask, yes, I am hard at work on a 2019 review for Borderlands 2. I have the base game completed and now have all the DLC to work through. I also plan to cover that leaked Borderlands 1 remaster whenever that releases, so keep that in mind for the future. With the imminent reveal of Borderlands 3, it is now a perfect time to return to these games and discuss how well, or poorly, they have aged. Borderlands The Pre Sequel is oft referred as the bane of this franchise, the clear weak link. However, sometimes even the weak link of a strong franchise can be considered a good game if you take a gander at the likes of BioShock 2, Sly Cooper 4, Batman Arkham Origins, and so on. For many, these games are actually the best in the series. So is that the case in Borderlands The Pre Sequel all these years later? Let's dig deep and find out. Shocker, we're gonna kick things off here with the story. Borderlands is a franchise decorated with charismatic people to encounter that tend to scream in your earholes via the echo net as you shoot, loot, laugh, and on the rare occasion, do some deep thinking on your way from objective to objective. In the case of Borderlands The Pre Sequel, this is absolutely, hands down, bar none, the weakest part of the game. The characters are straight up forgettable, and any character that is enjoyable tends to rest heavily on the laurels of its predecessor. In a world without Borderlands 2, this isn't a big deal, but Borderlands 2 showed that these games can feature a compelling, almost anti-hero-like villain, a surrounding cast with depth, and gradually build out a world space that originally felt designed just to be a shooting gallery for the player. You'll see often as you play this game that any of its strengths are built from that of Borderlands 2, which yes, Borderlands 2 is a fantastic game, but this game fails to separate itself and create an identity of its own. You are tasked with hunting down the mysterious vault on Elpis, Pandora's moon. You, as one of the 4 vault hunters, or 6 if you actually pack in the DLC, are never really fully explained by Jack why he wants access to this vault, which leads to the game constantly relying on the "he was paying me so I didn't ask questions" line up until the end when you actually get some form of clarification and it all makes sense. Now, while 2 left big shoes to fill, the pre-sequel does feel incredibly uninspired in the writing department nonetheless, which is easily the most important part of the Borderlands experience. We're talking about a game that delivers a lot of its storytelling through audio logs. You need good writing and also good acting to really deliver on those moments where you're not interacting face to face with a character. Jokes always fell flat, the tropes were predictable, and it slowly spiraled into a game whose story I could not wait to have wrap up, which is weird for a Borderlands title. Some may suggest that it's because the humor is mostly geared towards an Australian audience and I'm from the US, but don't forget, I ran a show weekly with an Australian for years. I understood the jokes, they were just anti-funny. Coin that term if you'd like.
That sounded better in your head.
This is just flat out bad writing if I'm brutally honest. The best moments peppered throughout are clearly seeing how handsome Jack develops into the guy he is in Borderlands 2, making sense of the way some mechanics in 2 work, such as how Hyperion bots are landing wherever you are in the game, or the AI behind them, and absolutely the hype ending the game sports. The ending alone felt worthwhile enough to drag myself through the story just to fuel that sweet Borderlands 3 hype. To simplify it all, you're not going to be into Borderlands The Pre Sequel for its storytelling. However, the gameplay, that in of itself may be worth loading it up for. When going from 2 to the Pre Sequel, you'll notice the lack of movement, jumping, and verticality throughout the rest of the series. That doesn't make the other games bad, but when you combine jump pads, butt bombs, soaring through large battlegrounds, zero gravity, and enemies both high and low, it's actually a lot of fun. In fact, I'll even go to the length of saying I hope Borderlands 3 incorporates a great amount of the gameplay elements from the pre-sequel into the big 3. Just don't take the AI while you're at it, okay? Because it's considerably worse than previous Borderlands titles, often standing there not shooting or moving, waiting for you to pick them like apples. I don't find this to be a franchise known for incredible AI. In fact, most of them want you to shoot them. You have psychos that run at you with buzzsaws, but the pre-sequel could sometimes become boring when enemies straight up aren't interested in shooting back, just like any game out there. When they do decide to shoot back and whittle away your life, it does highlight one flaw I've noted for the entire series as a whole. It does not stand just for Borderlands the Pre Sequel, but I do want to address it as someone who wants to see this series improve in some ways, and I do hope this mechanic receives some change, because Borderlands might be the only series that incentivizes you to go down. There are classes that can heal or quickly revive, there are guns that could even do that, and there are health pickups scattered about. But I don't think that disregards that there were plenty of times that I and many others have been running around on low health and went down intentionally just so that we could be revived at half health and then work from there. I'm hoping in the future that outside of character abilities, there are more conventional ways to heal your character, like having items on you that replenish HP. It sounds strange to harp on, especially because so many people who play Borderlands nowadays are like level 80 in Borderlands 2 and have no idea what having low HP is like. Trust me, I get it, but I'm saying for the new players coming in, the people who haven't experienced Borderlands, this is going to be a gameplay mechanic that is actually quite noticeable as you progress through the experience, and something that I do hope changes in the future. What continuously kept it enjoyable was not only the movement, but also the well-toted gun swapping gameplay. Especially nowadays, since Gearbox is just tossing out golden keys like it's nobody's business, it lets you scale up to the legendary gear even quicker and accelerates that experience of looting. It brought me back to a time where cheat codes were a thing, and I actually love that. Now, environmental variety is something that this game also struggles with quite a bit as you switch between the moon's surface with slight differences in the color of the space above you and factories lined with bland gray metallic walls and walkways. It lacks a sense of visual pop. Not that Borderlands has ever been known for its visual pop, but this game in particular lacks any inspiration in the environments. Nothing really catches your eye, and really one area simply blurs into the next. It all just becomes a playground for testing out all your new weapons you're looting. This really wouldn't have harmed the experience, but some of the late game quests do require a deal of backtracking, and sometimes fast travel placement isn't ideal, where you'll have to hoof it back and forth along some of these samey locales, and that can really hurt the experience. The Vault Hunters themselves are fun to build with their various skill trees, although Nisha felt a bit on the cheap side since her ability quite literally gives her an aimbot that can replenish upon kills, and it's incredibly good across every state of the game, making her a pretty obvious pick if you're going for the most OP character. But don't get me wrong, in Borderlands you can kind of build anyone to be busted, although Claptrap can be a little frustrating to team with if you're doing cooperative play. Let's move on to sound. The voice work is good, but as I mentioned earlier, is constantly let down by a frustratingly uninspired script.
Doc Grayson's working on some cloaking tech I want to start using on Hyperion snipers when it's done. Just imagine it. They take position, turn invisible, and then poof, bad guys literally have no idea what hit them. I mean, you know, they're probably gonna assume it was a bullet because there'd be a bullet hole in them, but whatever. It's freaking awesome.
I get it, because there were invisible snipers in Borderlands 2.
It's what happens to Borderlands when you remove all the good writing, all the good character interactions, and you rest solely on its gameplay. It's still alright, but it's definitely not as good. This even goes for Borderlands All-Star himself, Handsome Jack. His quick-witted wisecracks have considerably less personality and zing to them. Overall, it just ends up feeling quite hollow. There is a solid soundtrack tucked into the experience, but nothing really stand out. It'll match the moment-to-moment gameplay as you alter between exploring and shooting. Normally, a game of this ilk does have some type of standout track, but I didn't stumble upon anything that grabbed my attention. I usually do this quite a bit because I make videos about Borderlands, so I like to include a variety of tracks. What I did like, however, is the difference in gun sounds when you're indoors versus in zero gravity. I thought this was a nice touch, a level of detail and effort that they didn't really have to do, but it sounds awesome when you naturally switch between these areas and the gun sounds also change. It was a tiny treat for a mere audio geek like myself. All in all, Borderlands The Pre Sequel is still, in my opinion, the weak link for 2019. It's very hard to suggest this game unless you're in love with Borderlands, and even at that, I think Borderlands fans can openly admit the Pre Sequel is quite weak in its own right, and the only thing that's worth playing it for is that ending. What is offered is that it could add to 2 or your interest in 3, but all of this could be easily summarized in a video across the web, which I know we could say for any game we're not interested in, but with that said, it was only a 13-hour experience experience, and while this was my second time playing the game through, I was feeling a bit more relieved this time when it was all over. The only thing that will stick with you here, I feel, is the ending and some strong gameplay mechanics that I do hope Gearbox is taking a look at for 3. I don't expect the oxygen system or butt bombing to be back, but I do hope they look at verticality, which apparently, according to reports, is getting added, and movement of that ilk. Anyway, that will conclude my review for Borderlands The Pre Sequel. All in all, it's an alright game. It's a part of the Handsome Collection package, so if you plan on picking up Borderlands 2, you will be getting this one alongside it. I always suggest go to Borderlands 2 first. If you're in love with it, maybe give Pre-Sequel a rip, but you'll notice almost instantly how uninspired and hollow the experience is compared to the rest of the series. Yes, even Borderlands 1 or Tales from the Borderlands. Anyway, that'll do it for me. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments down below. Are you pumped for the Borderlands 3 reveal? Are you going back to Borderlands? Let me know, ladies and gentlemen. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, like me on Facebook. Those links are in the description down below, along with my Patreon. Do consider supporting that, as it fuels all the content I create here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.